Hello, Algebra 1. Welcome back. This video is going to be on multiplying polynomials. So now we're going to look at bigger and bigger polynomials that we're going to be multiplying together. So don't worry, it's not as intimidating as it sounds. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on this. Just a few slides to get through, and guess what? Good old distributive property, okay? Now, in this case, let's talk about the last video. If you watched that where I was just multiplying binomials, I could use that thing called FOIL, right? First, outer, inner, last. Here's the deal. That only works when you're multiplying a binomial times another binomial. What do we have here? We have a binomial with two terms times a trinomial with three terms. FOIL is not going to work, okay? So what we need to do is go back to that idea of applying the distributive property twice, all right? So we're going to take x and multiply that by that second set of parentheses, and then we're going to take the plus 4, and we're going to multiply that by the second set of parentheses. This is why I like relying on this one more than relying on FOIL, because we have a lot of kids that get really attached to that FOIL method, and they don't necessarily want to use anything else, but it doesn't always work. The distributive property always works. There's never a time that it won't work, okay? When you're multiplying polynomials, that is. Okay, so let's distribute. We have an x to the first times x to the second. Well, that's going to give you an x to the third. Now I have an x to the first times negative 5x to the first. There's my minus sign. I've got a 5 in there. That's my, well, it's really phantom 1 times 5, right? So 1 times 5 is 5. And then x to the first times x to the first is x to the second. Now we need to distribute this x to the 10. That's just going to be a plus 10x, okay? Now I'm ready to look at this second group. So I need to take 4 times x squared, easy enough, 4x squared. And now I need to take 4 times negative 5x. Positive times a negative is negative. 4 times 5 is 20, and my x is the only variable, so I have to make sure that sticks around, okay? And now positive 4 times positive 10, which is positive 40. And we go back and combine like terms. My x to the third is the only x to the third that I have. Now I do have a minus 5x squared, pardon me, and positive 4x squared. Those are both x squared terms, so I can combine those and put them together. We've got 5 negatives, 5 people on the negative team, and 4 on the positive team. They're on opposite teams, so they're going to battle each other. So who's going to win? The negatives, because there's more of them. How much are they going to win by? 1, because there's only one more of them, okay? Now let's take a look at this one. We've got a positive 10x and a negative 20x. Those are both to the first power, so those are like terms as well. The 10, those are on the positive team. The 20, those are on the negative team. So again, we have a battle. They're on opposite teams because they're wearing opposite uniforms, okay, or different uniforms. So who's going to win? The negatives, because there's more of them. How many more? 10 more. And then we have to keep that x on there at the end. And then I have my plus 40. And we're done. Okay? All right. Let's go on to slide 3. Okay, so here we go. If you guys would like to press pause and see if you can get this one worked out, we'll check as soon as you get back. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to do that. Again, we do not have a binomial times a binomial, so we can't use FOIL. I can't stress that enough. That works for a binomial times a binomial, and that's it. Okay, we have a binomial times a trinomial, 3 terms, so we're going to have to rely on good old distributive property. Okay, so we're going to take d, first term, multiply by the second set of parentheses. and then take our minus 1, the second term, and multiply again by that second set of parentheses. And start distributing. D times 3d squared, remember this is a d to the first, so this is going to be 3d to the third power. D times 2d, this is a phantom 1 out here in front, of course, so 1 times 2 is 2. D to the first times another d to the first is going to be d to the second. 1 times negative 5 is negative 5, and the only variable we have here is the d to the first power, so we better keep that around. Whoops, forgot to make my third arc. Okay, now we're ready to jump to this negative 1 term that has to get distributed through this set of parentheses. So negative 1 times 3d is negative 3d, whoops, squared. I didn't say the squared earlier, but the squared is part of that. Now negative 1 times 2d. Negative 1 times 2 is just negative 2, and then we've got a d on there, okay? And now I need to multiply negative 1 times negative 5, and negative times a negative is positive, and we have the 5 on there. Okay, so now we have to go back and combine our like terms. I don't see any other d to the third powers, right? So we're just going to have to keep that as its own term, 3d to the third power. Now, I have a 2d to the second power and a negative 3d to the second power. How do I know those are like terms? The variables and their exponents match identically. That's how I know. So I have positive 2 of them. They're wearing the positive uniform. And I have negative 3 of them wearing the negative uniform. They're on opposite teams because they have different uniforms. Who's going to win? That means it's a battle, right? They're battling against each other. Who's going to win? The negatives. By how much? 1 in this case. And our variable on there is a d squared. Okay? Negative 5d to the first and negative 2d also to the first. Just couldn't see it there for a minute. Both on the negative team. They're both wearing the negative uniform. They're on the same team. They're going to be working together. This is teamwork. They're going to make themselves stronger. So if I have negative 5 people on their D's, if you will, on the field, and then another negative 2 D's on the field, how many do I have out there altogether? 7 of them. And they're on the negative team. That's 7d to the first power. And of course, I don't have to show that first power. And then my plus 5. Plus 5 doesn't get combined with anything else because there are no other constants. Okay? All right. And that's it for that one. So let's move on to the last screen. Now, you're going to have within the lesson, they are using the idea of volume for some of the problems that they are presenting here. Of course, volume is length times width times height. When you guys go through the lesson, I'll let you go read through all the details of the particular problems, but I wanted to get to the gist of the mathematical component just to keep this video kind of short, if possible. And so you guys remember that to find volume, volume is length times width times height. We're just going to have to multiply these 3 things together, right? And so we're going to multiply them one piece at a time, right? You guys know already how to multiply a binomial times a binomial. You can either use the distributive property or you can use FOIL. Either one is fine. I would multiply these 2 together first, just simply because we don't have that extra coefficient that you find back here in that third set of parentheses. So if you guys would like to try this, now that I've given you a couple of pointers, go ahead and press pause now, and then we'll check when you get back. Okay, so we're going to do this one in a couple of parts. So hopefully you had a chance to multiply those first 2 together. When I multiplied them together, I told you I tend to go with the distributive property. It's just a good dependable method no matter what the scenario. So I got x squared plus 4x minus 21. Now that's not our final answer though. All that is the x plus 7 times x minus 3, just those first 2. Okay, so what I'm going to do is rewrite this so it matches what we've been seeing before. So I still have my binomial of 3x plus 5, and I can multiply that by this piece that I got when I multiplied the first 2 binomials together. X squared plus 4x minus 21. Okay, so now it's up to you. If you'd like to press pause again and try to work that out, press play then when you're finished, and we'll check when you get back. All right, I hope you guys had a chance to work that out. You're going to see all kinds of extra stuff down here. So remember, this time we're multiplying a binomial, starting here, multiplying a binomial times a trinomial, so we have to use the distributive property. We can't FOIL this. It only works for 2 binomials. So take your 3x, multiply by the second set of parentheses. Now my plus 5, multiply that by the second set of parentheses. Then we're going to distribute. That's this big, long mess of things down here. That's what I got when I distributed. And then I went back and combined my like terms to get this final result of 3x cubed plus 17x squared minus 43x minus 105. All right, so that's that. That pretty much runs you through everything you need to know. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to let me know. And thank you for watching. Bye-bye.